My name is Joshua K. Sabra Esquire, and with him as always, Dr. Miles Salisbury, and you're listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, the intersection between mental, physical, and spiritual health for those on the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. All right, we are live, and we're addressing one of my favorite topics about life today. The obstacle is the way. I've been looking forward to this conversation since we started the podcast, because when I'm suffering and going through my own individual journey, whether it's like failing at relationships or business or finances, I always feel like I'm the only one. And I kind of fall down the stairs, make a bunch of mistakes, and sometimes I learn from them and move on. And I like to hear about other people's process and how they live out their live past their failures, so to speak. So we're gonna get deep into that today. I'm really fascinated by this topic, and I'll share some personal quotes from people. Like actors, people like authors, like Sir Michael Caine, Ryan Holiday, Dr. Miles Salisbury, really important people in the field who are talking about personal development. But before we get to that, I need to know, Miles, how are you doing today?
A little bit better than last week. It's a work in progress. I'm hanging in, trying to have, like I said last time, new perception on the world, different outlook. This episode's pretty timely. This whole podcast has been pretty timely. Like, I'm in that sort of liminal stage of transitions, like midlife transitions, whatever you want to call it. And when you do that, you have a lot of obstacles to overcome, or it becomes a midlife crisis. So, as always, when you ask me a simple question, I start to rabbit hole, so I'm going to pull myself back. I am doing okay. How about that? That's the thing with introverts. Like, we hate to be asked how we're doing, because it's like, fuck, dude, I hate being authentic, and if I say I'm fine, I feel like I'm lying. And then I'm like, okay, but I got to tell you everything. And then that's not what people are looking for. They're just like, they want a what's up.
You're saying you hate being inauthentic.
I hate being inauthentic, and then like, do you really want to know how I'm doing? And I want to tell you, but then I can tell you don't really care. Like, not you, but like sometimes when people are like, hey, how's it going? Elevator talk is the worst for introverts. It just drives us crazy.
Well, I think the more self-aware I get, the more I don't know what the answer to that question is.
Yes.
I mean, aside being good to go, and I'm mostly good to go most of the time, somebody will ask me a question that, like, hey, how's your running, or how's something going? And it's like, well, I'm injured, but I'm still doing it. And it's like, it's kind of complex. I don't really know. I guess today I like running, but it's not static. And it's certainly, it's like, you ask me after lunch, I might feel better.
Boom. Yeah, the best working response I have now, and I heard one of my Jiu-Jitsu buddies said this one time. Someone asked him how he's doing, and he said, working on it. I was like, yes. But when someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm just going to say that. I'm working on it. And I get a laugh, and then they go away, and it's fine, because they don't really want to know. They just want to. They want to what's up, basically.
I think people. So I've come full circle on this. Not everybody wants to know, for sure. So the people that are in your environment that care about you, they do want to know. They actually want to know. It's like taking a temperature. It's not like you're going to do anything with the information, but it's like, what's the trend? And what do how can I? Most of the time, we're just trying to figure out what to expect from Miles, or what to expect from Josh.
Right. Like reading the room, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't want to bring up a bunch of stuff if you're in the middle of something. Taylor Tomlinson has a bit in her recent special where her friend calls her to tell her that she's getting engaged. She's engaged. And before she tells her, she like lets Taylor empty her cup and like let her kind of vent about her life for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then at the end, she's like, oh, so wow, okay. So she said, well, how are you doing? I'm good. I'm engaged. And she's like, what? Why did you bury the lead? She's like, because I wanted you to be in a place where you could hear me. And it's like, it was really good hand holding without judgment. Like, I know you're you got a lot going on, and depending on the day, like, we may be in a good state or a state of receptivity, or we may be like a bullet and we're already on our way to wherever we're going. So good for her for being able to examine that. But nobody got punched in the face in the last week. You're working on it.
Yep.
And what are you listening to right now?
Man, it's always it's again like, how are you doing? You'd have to look at my. So I just have it on shuffle on my phone. M83.
Okay.
Plus M83. Yeah, that one's been coming up a lot. There's a great. So when you do cryotherapy, you can choose your song while you're in there freezing your ass off. And I've been listening to M83. Can't remember the title of the album. It's probably the most famous one, but the last song is called Outro. And for whatever reason, like when I listen to that song, it's like it brings out sort of like the king archetype feeling in me. Like it's very majestic, and it keeps me focused in the cold. And it's good. If I'm ever feeling down, I just put that song on. I'm like, okay, you're still good. Like connect with the music. How's it resonating in your chest? And then it brings me back.
Like a feeling of triumphant.
That's it, exactly. Yeah.
And I love it. I love it. Anything with horns. Jay-Z's got a lot of songs with horns. The trumpet makes me feel pretty triumphant. Yeah, I like that.
Like reminds you of Reveille.
Yeah. Everything the Army does is about getting you in the mood to march, getting you in the mood to like. It is also there's the sense of gigantic organization and inevitability in everything you do. It's like it's not your platoon, it's 1st Armored Division. It's
we're all
it's
together.
The Army, not your. It's huge. It's a big. Yeah. So everything, all their songs and music is about a sense of, togetherness. Well, togetherness and in power.
And then the taps when we're melancholic.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah. Well, you got to mourn. I actually have to mourn, and that's. Gosh, this is all tying into the episode because every day is a process of growth and grief, and when you get caught up in one versus the other, you're missing something. So we're gonna tie into that too. But I'm listening to I'm back to metal. I got The Sword today, The Sundering, Iron Swan. These are The Sword is like a kind of a fantasy metal, big metal band. They do some acoustic stuff too, so they're quite a broad spectrum of music, but mostly instrumental. And there's some lyrics. I know there's lyrics to The Sword, but it's a really minor part of The Sword.
Some screaming here and there.
It's not even screaming. Sometimes it's just like 2 lines in the entire
randomly.
song. That was minimalist. No, it's how heavy this axe. They say it. They state what they want you to feel. It's very Viking. It's like this is literal. This is literal. You're holding a heavy axe. Yes. You're powerful, but you're also tired.
It works.
It works.
Music works.
Music works. So yeah, I'm dabbling in the metal again. But
cool.
But so the format for today's episode, I want to talk about. Basically, there's this Sir Michael Caine in his first few years as an actor was doing a play in London or in England, and he is supposed to enter the room while a couple is having a fight. They're fighting with each other, and these are all young actors, so they're getting into their craft, and so they're pushing over chairs, and one of them pushes a chair over and it falls in front of the door he's supposed to use to enter the scene. So he can't get into the scene, so the door barely budges, and the director is like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He's like, "Pardon me, I can't get in. There's a chair in the way of the door. What do you want me to do?" And the director says, "Use the difficulty. Use the difficulty." And he's like, "Well, I don't know what that means." He's like, "If it's a drama, you smash the chair. if it's a comedy, you fall over the chair. Use the environmental difficulty to augment what you're trying to do.
I love it.
And so that has been his way of going for himself, his family. Use the difficulty. Can you profit even 1% from whatever's going on in your life, in your world, the pain that you're going through? Can you use the difficulty? How can I use the difficulty? How can I use the difficulty? So that is the idea that I want to use to attack frustration, friction, and failure, because there's a profit in whatever you're suffering, whatever your obstacle is. There's a skill to learn, there's a quality of character to learn, there's an attribute to learn, and there's a strategy to learn too. Because sometimes maybe you don't need to climb the obstacle, maybe you need to go around. Maybe it's a different strategy that's going to take you to where you want to go. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to share a past obstacle that I faced in the miles ago. I wanted us to each bring an example of this where you or I hit an obstacle and it was painful and frustrating and spent time and energy trying to solve it. But in reality, there was a skill or there was something we were lacking that we had to apply. And then by that application, we were able to grow through. And you want me to start or you want to start?
You start, but one thing that just came to mind when you're talking about that example, before it flitters out of my brain. When I used to do Aikido, there was a principle of irimi, which means enter into the conflict. You know, instead of like, you don't want to get too close to it where you can't interact with your adversary, or run. And sometimes run through is the answer, but like if you enter into the conflict and you have agency, you can work with it. So when you had that example of Michael Caine in the chair, it's like that's the conflict and he's maneuvering with whatever that brings. Is it comedy? Is it a drama? What is it? And you maneuver. And so in Aikido, that is a very circular kind of martial art, and you enter in the conflict and you move circularly, sometimes laterally, linearly, but it's usually circular. That just came to mind. It's like, yeah, you enter in and you maneuver with whatever that adversity is giving you, because it's very much, you know, that you use their force against them kind of thing. That's kind of a thing with Aikido. Great martial art, but probably you get your ass kicked in real life unless you've been doing it for like 50 years. But the concepts are amazing.
Well, I think that's the whether you're doing Taekwondo or Aikido or any martial art, the thing that you learn, boxing, any martial art,
Jiu-Jitsu, is
you have options. You have so many options, but you don't know that when you are a dummy. When you attack something without skill, you don't know what all the options are. There's 5 punches in boxing, but there's 10,000 ways to apply the 5 punches. So there's a jab, an uppercut, a hook, cross, and
haymaker.
It doesn't matter. One more. No.
That's why they say combinations, right? You put these together.
Yeah. Well, the combination piece is like when and where do you apply it, but there's only a few punches, and the efficacy of your jab or the efficacy of whatever punch often depends on where you're at, what your opponent's doing, and what you're good at, what your skill set is, what their skill set is or is not. So if you know somebody doesn't have good head movement, then you don't need to necessarily be really fast. You can predict where their head's going to be because they don't move their head that much. So you can start to use that to your advantage. So that's what life is. It's a series of problems where you have a bunch of options that you don't know about because you don't have the skill. And sometimes you're in a place that you even shouldn't be because you don't have the perspective. So we'll get into that. But I'll share my example of something that I was dealing with when I was a younger man, and I deal with versions of it every day to this day, but it's trying too hard, specifically trying too hard to build muscle. When I was a young athlete and strength coach in the 2000s, mid-2000s, I was trying to improve my bench press, and I was trying to improve my squat and deadlift, all those things, but I was really, really aggressive. So I would, do the sets as prescribed, but I wouldn't give my body any time off. So I would, do, instead of doing 2 or 3 workouts a week, I would do 5 or 6. And then I would try to improve my push-ups on top of my bench press, which are like the same muscle group. So I'd be really attacking everything unstrategically. And what I would find is that even though I was doing the workouts, my numbers, my performance was dropping, and it would continue to move backwards. And talk about frustrating. You're like working your butt off, and you're trying to make something happen, and you're doing what all the videos say. It's like, be disciplined, show up, put the work in, and it was painful. And I was totally fine with all that. Like, I'm totally fine with sitting through pain if I think it's pain in the right direction. But I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I was, pissed off and upset, and all I did was I kept reading books. I'm a big reader, so I would continue to read books about strength training and the concept of the adaptation phase, which occurs when you're resting. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to make every workout easy and make every workout hard. And I'm going to follow this program as written, so I'm not going to do any extra stuff. I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do. And I remember my first workout where I thought I should be benching 185 for a set of 5 or whatever I thought I was. I remember I kept taking weight off until I was down to benching 115 pounds, which isn't very much for an athlete, especially a strength athlete. I was just approaching with total curiosity and skepticism. And then in the course of the next probably 8 weeks, my bench press went up by, I don't know, probably 60 pounds.
Damn.
And I tested at the end. So my max bench press was 215, 225, something like that. And then at the end of it, I was doing 265, 275. And it only took a couple of months. And it was probably just from working on technique and doing less and recovering more. But that's what was missing in my life. But at the time, I couldn't hear any of that. All I was doing was pushing harder and harder because that's what I could see other people in the gym doing, and I was getting worse and worse results. And I think that looking back now, I didn't know anything about sleep, or I knew a little bit about nutrition, but I wasn't emphasizing that because I was in my 20s and I thought I was bulletproof. So there was just so much stuff I wasn't doing that was not allowing me to recover and adapt and get what we call in the fitness industry super compensation, which was where you build back stronger than you were before. And to do that, you have to have a full and complete recovery cycle. And I wasn't doing any of that stuff, and I didn't even know what that meant. So the obstacle for me was rest, and the skill was recovery. There's many, many facets of recovery, mental and physical, but I didn't have any of them. And that was the beginning of the conversation about, so recovery can be a powerful tool if you apply it, if you're willing to apply it to specifically to get whatever you're trying to get. In this case, I was trying to build muscle and increase my bench press, which I was able to do. It was a frustrating period in my life, but yeah. So that's an example of the obstacles away. The frustration from what I thought was doing the right thing made me pause, be curious, and experiment in new ways of doing things and expand my toolkit. That gave me that expanded toolkit. Not only did it give me better results in that moment, but I used that toolkit on myself and other people in my life for the next 15 years. And that was able to dramatically expand the results that I could get, or the impact that I could have on myself and the health of all of my clients for the last 15 years.
You did good on defining the obstacle, because I think some people can get tripped up by that. Because when you first started talking about it, it's like the obstacle is I'm not getting stronger, right?
It's a consequence.
Yeah. See, I can see how you can screw that up.
Ooh, I love that. Let's zoom in. And that the consequence. This is people think, and I used to define my world by the consequences I was suffering from, and that is, well, one, defining your world by the problems you have, ooh, God, like that's
So easy to do.
it's a recipe for disaster, because then everything becomes painful. You know, if you're bad with money and you're in debt and you're underwater and you can't pay your bills, and you define your life by the consequence is, oh, my cost of living is too high in this model that we just made up about finances.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything's too expensive. Dude, I'm the consequence of a bunch of decisions that I made are now governing how I relate to everything. Like, oh, this is too expensive, I can't do this, I can't do that. No, you have to go back 6 steps and figure out how you got here.
Total mindset change. Yeah. Otherwise, like we were talking about earlier, that Jung quote where then you call it fate. Right? Oh, this is just what life gave me. Like, maybe some, but you made the decisions over time, and that became your outlook, and then you call it fate. Like, you're making your own fate in a way.
Well, that's the part that I think is, I mean, this is why we're doing this podcast, because most of the time when I talk to somebody, I'm a fitness coach, and among other things. And when I talk to somebody about their health and fitness, our conversations never go the way that they think they're going to go, because they are not responding to data. They're responding to their cognitive distortions about the data that they have about their health and their life. So a really good example, a wearable gives you all kinds of really cool outputs all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh, I've exercised for 48 minutes. I burned 552 calories. Cool, wonderful. Well, what people do is they use those as scoreboards instead of, say, by scoreboards I mean, ooh, more exercise better, less exercise worse. Feel good when the score is high, feel bad when the score is low. Instead of what it was meant to be, which is, oh, I'm burning 500 extra calories. I better make sure I'm mineralized, hydrated, and maybe even get a little extra carbs tonight. That's probably what I'm going to need to recover from this training today. And instead, people are like, well, whatever I do, I can't eat more calories than I burned. So they're not only are they beating themselves up for the numbers, but then they're cutting their legs out from underneath them with the data. And it's like, it's not that transaction that hurts you. It's a whole map painted with these different colors that don't belong. And that's where having a coach and a teacher comes into play. And Miles does this with people in their mental health and their owning their projections and their relationship with themselves.
Putting out blind spots. Yeah,
and I do this with people's fitness programs and the systems and strategies they use to create their results. It's like most of the time it's clarity. It's like, what can we just eliminate the noise? If we could just do that, we would be in a dramatically different place with almost everyone.
Definitely. Yeah, I think of meditation and mindfulness. You're kind of practicing doing that, coming back to the present, eliminating the noise. Not eliminating thought, but noticing thought, and then releasing thought, coming back to breathing or sound. I don't know. That's just what popped up. As it does when you talk. I have all these strings floating around.
I love it, man. Well, I mean, it's, in my opinion, living is a process of waking up and strengthening our ability to be present. Mm-hmm. So if we're doing that now, we're winning. But that's an example of an obstacle wherein I lacked both the perception and the skills needed to cross that obstacle. So I had to go get them. And I used that through literature. I used that through borrowing from teachers. I hired coaches. I mean, I sought it. So I'm a seeker. So I wanted to go out and get that information. And some people now I would think it's more intuitive, but intuition is just refined habit that you did on purpose over time. I don't believe intuition is magic. Okay, there is a magical part of our intuition. We're not going to get into that on this podcast. Well, I want to talk about Miles and his experience.
Oh, man, you just opened up 6 rabbit holes right there for me, so I'm glad you pulled me back.
I want to talk about Miles and his examples of being stuck in a place that's irritating and painful, and then having to grow through it. So what do you got for us today?
Oh man, my mind, rabbit holes again. Let's stick with the physical health, because I've got some elbow injuries. I was training for a Navy SEAL event. It's put on by SEALFit.com, where you go do like a light version of Hell Week. Instead of 6 days, it's 2 days, and it's for civilians and military veterans that want a taste of what it could be like, so they can practice. And I was training my ass off, and about 6 months in, I was following their program. My elbow was just hurting like a bitch, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just sore. I'll just work through it." Kind of like your example, just keep pushing. And it got to the point where it hurt so bad, and that's when I went and saw Dr. Kaluza. Hope we can have in the pockets at some point. He's a orthopedic surgeon for the Trailblazers. Met her at the gym. I went and saw him, and he ultrasounded, and he's like, "Yeah, you got 2 torn tendons in your elbow." I'm like, "What?" Like, yeah, they're torn. He's like, "Let's put you on physical therapy, do some blood flow restriction, come back in like a couple months, and we'll do it again." So I did that, and it wasn't getting better. And he had to do 2 rounds of PRP, and that dramatically healed it. Then when I had to come into this room with Grant and John, the physical therapist here, and he did more PT and Shockwave. We'll let them talk about that in a future podcast. Shit's magical. That finished it off, and I was like, "Oh, cool." So they healed my left one, but I didn't learn a lesson, because guess what happened about 6 months later? My right elbow starts hurting. Like, what in the hell am I doing? And so I had to slow down and figure out, what movements am I doing? And that's when you were noticing my wrist movement in bench and things like that. And he told me today I have hyperflexible elbow joints.
Yeah, hypermobility in the elbow. Yeah.
Didn't know that. So these small things are adding up to it. So doing less is more, not working out when I'm hurt, listening to the PT's advice, doing Shockwave, doing the exercises, and now it's starting to feel better. So I guess the obstacle for me was like listening to what my body said, getting rest, and not trying to plow through, staying on a plan, listening to what the professionals say, and not just plowing through. Less is more is like a weird concept for me. Like if it's like a supplement or a medication, it's like, yeah, you just take more and just keep upping the dose. Like, that's dumb. But I have that mentality sometimes, where I need to learn less can be more. Otherwise, it's the poison is the medicine, or the medicine becomes the poison, sort of thing. So in this case, it was. I'm still going through it, still healing the elbow. I was like listening to my body, following the protocol, letting it heal properly, and then this time I probably won't have to do any PRP, which would be great. No injections, just natural healing. I don't know if that's a good example or not, but that's what came to mind.
Well, what's the? I like your I don't know if it's a moniker or a mnemonic, but the poison is in the dose. Mm-hmm. Something small can be helpful, something mm-hmm. large can be lethal, mm-hmm. something small can be useless, something large can be helpful. Mm-hmm. Well, so there's awareness, right? There's perspective in your body that you've gained, right? Like knowing what enough is, knowing what your joints are supposed to be doing in different movements, I think is important. So there's movement skill, there's biomechanical status. A lot of people don't know whether or not they're hypermobile or hypomobile. They don't know whether or not they're fast twitch or slow twitch. They don't know whether or not they are, their metabolism. They don't know where their metabolism is even at, because they don't monitor these things or check. Or if they do, they're doing it on their own, and they're creating a story around it without meaningful data. Mm. But so you've expanded your awareness of your biomechanical status, mm-hmm. as well as your particular body and what enough is. And it's also affected the way that you're moving. We saw today we were working out, and you're, avoiding lockout. You're at 98% with those joints, and then you can even say it didn't bother your anything. Yeah. So, let the healing continue.
Yes.
So it's like, and this falls into another part of a conversation we were having earlier, where when people think about mistakes that they make, they don't intentionally make them. We unconsciously make mistakes. Like I wasn't trying to get worse and make my body worse. I was trying to do the right thing and move forward. I was just being impatient and aggressive, and I didn't know, I didn't know what enough was, and I was just, being dumb, being ignorant. It's not dumb to want something. It's ignorant of the rules that apply and the strategies that work. Mm-hmm. And what you were saying is like you're working out, you care a lot about your health, but these are things that you didn't even know existed until earlier today.
Nope, never had an issue before.
So a lot of times when we're pressured or we're frustrated or we're being repeatedly defeated by something, there's something you don't know. There's something you don't know about what you're dealing with. And I'll get into the obstacles that I'm in right now that I'm not through. And I'm trying to find my voice right now. I'm trying to post more on social media and shoot more videos. And I enjoy it. And I love sharing my passion and knowledge about things. But I'm trying to get better at social media. So I'm watching Gary Vaynerchuk videos, and he's teaching you how to use Instagram or these different mediums, and he's like, no one's shadow banning you. You suck. You suck at this. You suck at social media. So no one sees or cares about what you're posting because you're not good at it. And I was laughing because it never occurred to me that I could be shadow banned or banned or anything like that. I just knew I sucked. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm at the right spot.
Yes.
This is where we're going, right? But like, I can write and post quite a bit, and I do. And if you're not good, I'm just putting in bad reps. So I hired a copywriter. I bought a couple of info products, and I started to get people's feedback on what I was writing. And the feedback was great. They're like, oh, this is really complicated and dense, and you have to help people understand why they should be reading it, and you get better. So there's skills that you have to develop, and I haven't developed them. So anyways, as of the recording of this, I'm still working on my, how to use my voice, how to share my work with people in a way that's actually meaningful and matters. And there's things I don't know. I don't know how to. I'm not a photographer. I don't even have a fascination about social media. So to me, my mindset, and this is not a healthy mindset, so I'm trying to update my script. My mindset is social media isn't real. And I don't view it as like a real medium of art, which it clearly is because it influences me, right? So like here I am getting influenced by people's actual work and the things that they're putting out and the products they're selling and things like that. And I'm discounting that it's a real thing in my brain. So this is why self-awareness is so important. I have a bunch of faulty ideas, bad scripts, and low skill level at certain things. And I'm updating it, and I'm getting the reps in. But I need someone to coach me through what a rep looks like, so I don't just sit there and waste my time and energy and just hurt myself like I did back when I was trying to bench press more.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So should we maybe discuss the topic more in depth of what the obstacles way means, where it comes from, or do you want to talk more about personal examples?
Well,
or do you want to break it down into these three areas?
Well, I think so. Where people get stuck on this, I mean, I made it sound really simple, and Miles made it sound really simple. We're talking about like mechanical things of like our bodies not working, or us not getting well, or injuries that are created through different strategies. But in real life, it's very depressing. It's very discouraging to fail at something that you care about a lot, and that's where people. That's like the mire that people get drowned in. That's remember D'Artagnan on the horse, like getting in the swamp and the and either getting swallowed by quicksand or in a bog. It's like that's where dreams die, because we're sitting here really giving a shit, really putting ourselves into it. Nothing's happening, or moving backwards. And that's where the story comes up. And you've got some really good quotes here. I like this one. I think it's choose not to be harmed. Yeah. Give us that quote.
Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. So choose
not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been harmed.
It's a Stoic quote. I think this comes from Ryan Holiday's book, Obstacles Away. And it might come from Marcus Aurelius. I'm not 100% sure.
Sure. Well, everything he says comes from either Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius. He just regurgitates in modern language for us.
And thank God for that.
He's doing us.
First time I read meditation, I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I didn't realize it was his personal freaking journal. Like, no wonder it didn't make any sense. And then you learn about Stoicism, and you go back and read it. It's like, that's what he's talking about. So
yeah. But choose not to be harmed. So when you're It's hard to do that when you're actually being harmed.
Super hard.
So you're bench pressing and you're getting exhausted and you're moving backwards. You're exercising and your joints are tearing apart. Like those are painful experiences, and we layer on judgments about ourselves. And this is basically the rest of this podcast could just be how much time I spend trying to untie the knots that people create right in that phase, where, oh, my hormones are off, or oh, I have big bones, or oh, I'm hypermobile, and my ligaments I have ligament laxity, and oh, I have this and that, and people look for data to confirm the cognitive distortion they already have about themselves.
They're adding a second narrative. In Buddhism, they call this the suffering of suffering. You already have the first pass of suffering, like I'm hurt. And the second pass is all these stories, and you're heaping on extra suffering you don't need. And in Stoicism, this is called the discipline of perception. Like, if we could just stay with the initial pass of suffering, I got hurt. I can choose that I'm not harmed psychologically about this. I can choose there's no narrative. I don't have to add a story. I don't have to self-flagellate.
But even then, it doesn't feel like a story. It feels like what's happening. So I'll give you an example. So like, you're doing dips or whatever, and both your elbows hurt, and your story is great. Now I can't do dips.
Right.
That doesn't seem like a story of that's not a story of judgments. I go up and talk to a girl, and she rejects me, and she yells at me and tells me I'm ugly. Like, me feeling like inadequate or feeling like I wasn't meant to talk to girls, it doesn't feel like a story. That's in that space of pain, you immediately create a narrative, but it doesn't feel like you're creating it. It feels like it just is when we're sitting with our judgments that way. Yeah,
that's the first pass. The initial insult, you can't avoid it. It's going to happen, but don't add to it.
Well, right. But it doesn't seem, people, okay, I'm dying on this hill, and this might be the purpose of this podcast. People don't think that they are being sensitive when they craft rules around their suffering. So let's stick with the physical because it's so obvious.
Okay.
You're doing your
dips.
You're doing your dips. Your elbows hurt. You've got tendon tears. You're like, you know what? I can't do dips anymore. That's a logical feeling.
Sure.
Exercise, pain from exercise.
Stop.
Symptom, pain from exercise. You will craft that narrative so fast, and we box ourselves in. We paint ourselves into a corner slowly over time because there's things that we're not good at. And instead of saying, what is going, in an enlightened way or a wise observation would be, what could I do differently in the dip to prevent my painful experience? That's a question, the answer to which will yield a lot of powerful next steps, because the answer is to change the joint mechanics, is to change the muscle imbalance that's going on there.
Not just, pun intended, dip out and little exercise.
That's right. Very good. Yeah, good.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, you're a poet and you know it. You're spitting it and throwing it.
Oh boy.
So you're exactly not to dip out, but when you're in that moment, you think you're being thoughtful, you think you're being useful, you think those judgments are valuable, and it's not until they create a false identity and a false premise about your whole life or a whole aspect of your life, like your health, your physical resilience, whatever it is, that begs the question. And so the second suffering, we don't know that's what we're layering. We don't know that that's the bricks that we're layering.
Correct.
And it's not until someone just asks the question until someone pierces the veil.
Yes.
And then you laugh at how thin that whole line, all that stuff was that you made up.
It just drops.
Yeah.
Hopefully it just drops. And that's the discipline of perception.
That's the discipline of perception. Mm-hmm. And how
or
to be...
reframing in psychology, you say.
But, okay.
It's not as easy as that.
So, but this is it has to be, in my mind, and maybe there's people that are not like this, but I do believe it has to be modeled somehow for the person, because it doesn't, when I was younger, the narrative around all the adults around me was victim. And I remember my grandfather lecturing one of my cousins about their low grades in math. And my cousin was saying, I've got this bad math teacher and she doesn't like me. And he just thoughtfully listened for a second. He's like, well, bad teachers exist and you're going to have some. And it's okay if a teacher doesn't like you, because you're not trying to make friends with this teacher. You need from them a grade that gets you what you want in life, that gets you access to college, that gets you access to the next level. So you need to learn. Part of being a good student is learning how to sidestep a bad teacher to get what you need.
That's good advice.
And it's not advice, it's perspective. Because he's taking it from the teacher's job to give you education to the student's job to get the education.
It's on you.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'd never heard anyone say that. And when he said it, I just felt a sense of power. Like
ownership.
I felt it. I was like, I get it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if you don't have somebody modeling that in front of you, and we kind of know it's not right. Like when you're injured, like when I was injured, it kind of doesn't make sense. And we have this a little bit of intuition of like, what am I doing that's different than what everyone else is doing? And it's subtle, right? 3 degrees.
3 degrees.
The 3 degrees is the difference between when a rocket leaves the Earth, it hitting the sun and hitting the moon. 3 degrees. Yeah. So if you can get that correction, if you can correct over time, you can get that lunar landing and you can be a hero and not burn up in the sun like Icarus.
Let's avoid that one. I've done that a few times.
So choose not to be harmed. Where this has all come back from the second suffering, and I just think that has to be modeled for you, because the limitations that we breathe life to, I don't think we know another way. I think that we kind of suspect that we're in the Matrix, but I don't think that I think someone has to show us how to pierce the veil.
Yeah, how to jack out of it or whatever they call it in the Matrix. That sounds kind of bad. What do they call it?
Jack out. I don't know what it is.
Something with a jacking.
I don't know, but also like the Matrix that's a good hero's journey. There's lots of good hero's journeys, but it's like Luke didn't wake up and know how to use the Force.
Right.
He woke up and knew there was something else out there, and someone had to show him how to use the Force. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're not just born and you're just Force choking people. If only.
Well-honed skill.
That conversation should be the bumper. That should, for this episode, is like, people aren't intentionally fucking their lives up.
No one is. Yeah. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
Why would we do that?
So I think that is just gently intercepting that. So if you can intercept that narrative and ask better questions earlier on in the process when you're frustrated, it's okay to be frustrated, because if you're frustrated,
it's a good
you're
sign.
Doing something. Like, you'd even take it back to where you're frustrated and you're good at something. Like, I remember being terrified about teaching group fitness and getting in front of people and leading, and it was so scary, but I was good at it. And I was just scared because it was new and it was a neural pathway I hadn't owned before, and I got to be seen and all these other things. And it was all new, and it's like being frustrated and moving forward and frustrated and moving backwards seem very similar. So being frustrated isn't the enemy. It's are you causing damage? Are you damaging? Are you wasting your time? Are you damaging yourself? Are you building bad habits and skills that don't do anything? I think that's the piece. What are you developing?
Makes sense. So that was under the discipline of perception. These are coming out of Ryan Holiday's book, Obstacles Away. He divided into 3 sections: discipline of perception, discipline of action, and discipline of will. Action.
I don't think so, and I love the format of this because I don't think that action is difficult. I think people don't like the pain that you and I are talking about
of
being confused and hurting yourself and moving forward. When I think that's why like it's so much easier to go to like a CrossFit workout or something where there's a bunch of people, you have a coach,
tells you what to do.
There's no ambiguous there's nature of it. It's like a lot of the fears we have are just like wasting time doing things wrong. But once you get all that out of the way, the action is actually rewarding. I don't know very many people that don't feel better leaving a workout than they do entering it. But getting them to enter is usually if they can get over those cognitive distortions is what's holding them back. That's
a big one. Or sort of stress inoculation. You go in and get used to something over and over, and then it becomes normal. Like practice. That's a version of exposure therapy and what I do. And the Stoics would practice sort of, practice the fear of poverty. They'd like fast and they'd wear like the same clothes every day. They'd sleep on the floor and they're like, okay, I know what this feels like and I'm not afraid of it anymore. And if it's hit, I'm good. So therefore I don't have to fear it anymore. And it was a funny story of Tim Ferriss doing this exercise. I think I'm getting this right, but he would go into Starbucks in line and he would just lay down on the ground. Get used to being like uncomfortable. And he started to realize like, once he was fine, it was actually everyone else that was uncomfortable. Like, and they'd be like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just fine." And then you just pop up and order his coffee. I think I'm getting that story right, but how ballsy is that?
Well, 2 different things. He used to do that. If I read his book as well, he would do that. Act out of context in any context. So he would like lay down at a dance club. But it was to make space so he could break dance. People get away from him thinking he passed out. And but it would freak everyone out. Yeah, that's right. And he would look stupid and weird and not cool. And then he would break dance. So he could get space to do that in a dance club. But you would do stuff like, I think he says in his 4-hour work week, like go to a public square where people are hanging out, picnicking and whatever, and playing Frisbee and having arguments and drinking beer, and do your work. Because if you need a perfectly quiet environment to work in, maybe you shouldn't try, because it was all about being the new rich and having a free time and things like that. It's like if you can't shift context at will, maybe you shouldn't have your own business and your own job. So he had all these kind of checks to say like, hey, maybe you need the reinforcement of doing things with other people. And so there was a lot of different things that you had to do to break a context. Break out of a context inside that book or those books. It was really good. Yeah, and it freaks other people out when you don't play by the rules.
It does. It's funny, but then you get over it, and then you actually watch them feel uncomfortable, and then that makes you feel sort of comfortable because they're uncomfortable. And it's like, oh, you're just equally as weirded out about this, and I don't have to be anymore, I guess. Well, you can go ahead and have the weird feelings about it.
Well, and man, we should have a podcast just about interpersonal skills, because when you break the social contract and you are real with people, and in a safe way, not like a panicked, oh my God, the sky's falling and you're just like a ranting person. But like if someone asks you, how you're doing, and you're like, I just got back from a funeral, I'm really grieving the loss and the loss of my family. Like would you give other people permission to be vulnerable and real in a safe way? Like you widen the space for everyone.
Yeah.
And you give people permission to be color outside the lines too. And it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sort of what we do in my men's groups. As soon as someone risks being open or the V word, vulnerable, then everyone else goes, oh, I can do that too. You're not going to kick me in the nuts for that? No. And then that person's a little more vulnerable. And then before you know it, people are open and then the group gets more cohesive because of it. They start to trust each other. It's a similar idea.
Yeah, that's right.
We can move to discipline of action if we want to. Action taking on thoughts, sort of like the iterative approach that we talked about last time, like with Jocko, try shit, step by step, having persistence, learning from what didn't work over time. One of the quotes from the book is, "Failure shows us the way by showing us what isn't the way." Also,
Yeah. Well, I like that quote if you have some reference points, because knowing what doesn't work, yes, like Jiu-Jitsu is a really good example. There's only 5 finishing moves, right? Well, okay, there's millions, but like
countless. Yeah.
there's countless ways to finish someone. There's like 5 big ones, 6 big ones, and you have to figure out how to get into those on your own.
There's a process.
You have to figure out how to get in those positions.
And they're trying to do that to you. Is the other fun thing.
But it's not random. So like you could, if you show up to a jiu-jitsu class but you don't have instruction, you just get choked out, it would take you a lot longer to learn.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. You will learn at some point not to be in that position.
So it's in context failure.
Correct. In context failure.
Yeah.
And then you don't always, like you said before, you don't always have to meet the obstacle head on. You can outthink or outflank them sometimes. It doesn't have to be like force on force. Back to the sort of Aikido principle.
Yeah. And it's not, I think, gosh, there's so many like subtext to this podcast, but it's not effort. Effort will not get you a blue belt. Effort will not choke the person out in front of you. You actually have to have skills, and skills take time, but it doesn't take effort. But you have to. There's a lot more allowing than what it would seem. You'd have to be there and be present, not white knuckling it. It's not an effort thing. Effort's part of it. You have to get the effort in. You can't be asleep and put the reps in. But if you're on the mat, it's not about making it happen. It's about being in the process.
Mm-hmm. And I think Buddhism calls it effortless effort.
Yeah, I like soft focus, like playing an instrument. Like you can only put your fingers on the exact strings to make the guitar work, but if you over grip the guitar, you get nothing.
Great analogy. The resonance, yeah. Yeah, that's another patience tester right there, learning the guitar.
Yeah, man. Well, I've got the C chord so far.
There you go. You can play that metal now. Just get some.
We could talk about
pedals.
Maybe this should be a 2-parter. We're almost like an hour.
We've lost like 25 people. Thanks for staying with us so far.
I mean, we've got the discipline of action, the discipline of
perception,
and then the discipline of will.
Will is the next one. Yeah. The quote is, "Like any good school, learning from failure isn't free. The tuition is paid in discomfort or loss and having to start over."
Yeah.
So it's perseverance beyond mere persistence. It's the long game.
It's a long game, and God, if you're somebody who's just gifted at intrapersonal skills, you may not have to get married multiple times. If you're somebody who's really good at business, you may not have a string of failures, or you have micro failures inside of a successful business. I'm not really either of those, but because I failed at marriage and at business before. But at people that I've known who've been married for 65 years, and people that I know who have never lost a business and have always been profitable, they learn fast, they take smaller risks, and the failures are micro failures. Like, you do something your partner doesn't like, you update your map of them, you stay with who that person is becoming, and you don't try to pretend like you know what's best for them. And so the same thing for your like finances or business. It's like, if you're taking big risks that you've never taken before with skill sets you don't actually have, which is I've done all of those things, then you're going to have big losses and big mistakes. And anyways, I don't have much to say about that. The discipline of will. I think there's, I'll speak for myself. I'm okay being uncomfortable. I'm more okay with the discomfort of moving forward than I am with the discomfort of staying the same. And there's some, but not in everything. There's some things where I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try that hard for whatever it is. I haven't found that thing yet, but I give myself permission.
You got the order of operations correct there. And the obstacle is the way he was talking about in this section. Abe Lincoln, and sort of like in therapy we say it's grist for the mill. I don't actually know where that saying comes from, some mill saying, but it's sort of like using the poison as the medicine in the way. But he was talking about Lincoln being prone to, they call it melancholy back then, but depression. And he had to go through a lot of shit and a lot of adversity in his life. But that he went through all that, had patience, and learned to work with it. It molded him to be the perfect person for the fucking Civil War, be that leader. And he knew what to do because he'd gone through all this shit in a different battle, personal battle that he applied to, the real battle. So that's sort of using, the obstacle as a way. I think that's a good example. Using all this pain as feedback, what to do with it, how to grow from it, and then you can metaphorically apply that to other areas in your life. That's sort of what he did.
Absolutely. I think that's there's something even bigger at play there. It's like the concept of grace. I am being conditioned for the next step. Actually, that's the theme of this whole podcast, really. It's you're being conditioned. If you're listening to this, you're being conditioned for the next step in your life, whatever it is. Better health, better relationships, better finances, whatever it is, you're already being conditioned for it. If you're listening and you're able to ask good questions from the experience you're having now. Because the frustration of not being able to, in my life, all of my failures, whether it was closing down the gym or all the physical injuries and things I've been through, they've made me so prepared for helping other coaches build their businesses, for helping other clients overcome their obstacles. It's so easy now because I've failed so many times. And in the time I resented it and I wanted the result, but the skill is what creates the results. So I think I'm being conditioned for the next level is a very privileged mindset to sit in. If you're somebody who is maybe feeling like they're drowning at the level they're on, I understand how disconnected a statement like that is, but that's always been true for me.
That leads to another good quote here. Each time you'll learn something. Each time you'll develop strength, wisdom, and perspective. Each time a little more of the competition falls away until all that is left is you, the best version of you. I mean,
love that.
It's cute, but it makes sense. I
mean, it's not cute, it's true. My industry has a 90% attrition rate. And I know a handful of coaches that I've met over the years that are still in, mm-hmm. And lo and behold, they're really good. Mm-hmm. They're really good.
It's like any spec ops or like this team guys, SEALs, like high attrition rate. Those motherfuckers are elite because of that.
Yeah, it's set up like that on purpose. Mm-hmm. I don't think our industry is set up like that on purpose, but I do see that. That's the effect. Uh-huh. That's exactly right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow, man, that was cool. I got a lot from just talking this out. I think the big takeaway, if you want to build muscle, increase your bench press, slow down, rest more skill, less weight, patience, food and sleep. If you want to recover from an injury, you have to do something different. You can't do the same thing with more physical therapy. You have to do it differently. Mm-hmm. So
that's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, treatment. Mm-hmm. Treatment is the intervention to the cycle of dysfunction, but then you have to have a functional cycle. You have to repair the movement pattern.
Yeah, it's the same in like what I do with patients.
Exactly.
Same thing in the mental world.
Amen, brother. All right. Wow. We got a lot. We got dance.
Yeah.
Anything else to add, or anything you want people to really have for this conversation?
I guess I had one more quote here. We can end with it. No one said you can't ever cry. Forget manliness. If you need to take a moment, by all means go ahead. Real strength lies in the control, or as Nassim Taleb put it, the domestication of one's emotions, not in pretending they don't exist. So Stoicism gets a bad rap that you're not you just don't feel emotions. No, you domesticate them, but you still feel them. You don't chase them away, but you don't act them out.
Yeah.
You don't obsess, but you don't repress. That's what I always tell my people. Somewhere in the middle.
I don't, I've always been a crier. I've been very emotional. I also have I'm very emotional in general. My demand for numbing or emoting is very high. I gotta emote. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out. Are you a crier? Do you?
I'm a feeling type, yeah. But I have a history of suffocating it because of my upbringing. You know, like last time I wasn't allowed. We were talking about I wasn't allowed to express anger or feelings, so I just kind of swallow it, and that turns to depression.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that still there, but yeah, I feel things. And you said numbing goes a lot with feelings, or saying?
My desire for numbing behavior is in lockstep with how emotional I am. Mm-hmm. So I need to emote in real time frequently, or like I'll need to I need a drink. I get out of control.
Yes, yeah, that fits. That definitely fits my experience too. We can do a whole podcast on addictions and such, because that's that.
Yeah, well, I got to reach out to a buddy of mine. A buddy of mine was saying he's only cried twice in his life.
Hoy.
And it wasn't at funerals or anything. It was kind of random. His mom died and he never cried. He had cried one time before that, and then I think he's cried a couple times. I wonder if that's still true. I don't know. He's got kids now. I feel like that changes you.
Oh boy, yes. You that tender-hearted sadness of life, the preciousness of life. That will soften you hopefully it does. I mean, that definitely changes you when you have kids.
Well, there we go, man. Well, this is a signal to be emotional, be vulnerable, and part of learning is admitting there's something you don't know. And if you're learning, you're growing, so that requires vulnerability.
Yep. Doesn't mean you fall apart and stay apart, but it's okay to fall apart and get back up. And when you fall apart, there are things that shatter that you didn't notice is there in yourself that you need to reclaim when you build yourself back up. You didn't notice till you broke down, if that makes sense. But you got to put Humpty Dumpty back together.
All right, and if you need help gluing Humpty Dumpty back together, Dr. Miles' phone number is 555.
Yeah, so you can look me up. Yeah, and you do some of this too in your work, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, the gym is for crying. That's my experience. The gym is for crying.
Out of the pain you put people through, or
no, they come with it. I love it. They'll take a couple of steps and they'll do some warm ups, and then the tears come, and I think it's because they're in their body and they're sensory aware.
Yes,
and the what is it called? Disassociation stops.
Yep, you can't. Yeah, I've heard this with body workers, chiropractors, the similar phenomenon. You
can't learn and be disassociated, by the way. So good luck if you're trying to do that. Good luck.
Addictions.
Yeah, I guess if you're autistic, maybe a little bit, but even then, because there's some coder people who are kind of on the spectrum, who are no, this is all mechanical, ones and zeros, but it's you're still a human in there.
Correct. Yeah, it's different. It's just different. That's another episode as well.
That's another episode.
Before we go down more rabbit holes. All right, that was a good one. Use the grist for the mill.
Use the grist for the mill. Get after it. Stay hungry.
Until the next.